Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a really special IG Live today as two guests will be joining us. We're going to be joined by Andrew Harveson and Levi Garrett. Both Andrew and Levi are two university professors of kinesiology. And kinesiology actually studies the mechanism of human movement and how they impact our health and well-being. And Andrew and Levi are hosts of the Move 101 podcast, which I had a great time on recently. And it's a really awesome podcast. We're going to have them talk about it. And so we're going to discuss kinesiology and other tips about staying active and healthy. So I saw.
There we go.
All right. Is Levi going to join us?
Yeah, he should be here any minute if he hasn't already jumped in. How's your day going?
Good. I'm really excited about this podcast because this is the first time we have two people joining and also two professors joining. So it's like so good.
We get to test out technology here a little bit.
Yeah, so I have not seen him. I'm trying to find his account, but I couldn't find his account for some reason.
Okay. Let's see.
Thank you, everyone who's joining. Give us a few minutes to figure out all the tech difficulties.
Yeah, I don't see him in here yet. He should be here though.
How's your day going? We'll give him a couple minutes.
It's going. It's I've been Monday's my grading day, so I've been grading papers for most of the day. We're also weaning our youngest. We have two boys, and so we're in the process of trying to cut off the milk supply. And last night was a long night. I'm just gonna say that.
So I was just gonna ask, are you getting enough sleep?
Well, I was gonna say I'm excusing the wrinkles under my eyes for today because it's a work in progress. We're getting there, but if there are any parents out there that are going through a similar thing, I feel your pain.
That was also in the introduction I was going to say, because on your podcast, you not only talk about kinesiology, like physical activity, movement, you also give so much tip for parents, like to, with, developing child development and supporting their kids and everything else.
Yeah, that's really we look at it a little bit selfishly almost, right? We're parents of young kids as well, but that's kind of our target audience, is seeing how we can provide tips and strategies to parents who are kind of in this same era that we are, whether it's young kids or teen kids, that kind of age range of trying to get kids through high school, let's say, in a healthy way. So we're trying to explore a lot of those different topics and tips and strategies for helping parents out with health as a very broad sense. So yeah, that's where we're aiming to target. So I appreciate that you brought that up.
Yeah, I think our audience, besides people who are trying to conceive, which I think is really good for them to hear from you guys so they can prepare for their journey. But at the same time, we also have parents who will be our audience, and it would be really beneficial for them to hear all the topics that you're covering.
Right. I just saw a text from Levi. He was not seeing the link. Let me see if I can help him out here real quick. Oh, there we go.
So let's see if I can invite him. Oh, here we go. I just sent him an invite.
Okay. Yeah, I honestly have never seen Instagram Live with more than two people, so there we go. Curious to see how this works.
All right.
Here you
All
are.
set. We're all set.
Hey.
How's it going today?
It's actually pretty smooth. So
Yeah.
thank you both.
Howdy, partner.
How are you doing? Oh, okay.
Sorry, we were on delayed. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay.
How are you doing?
Doing good. It's Monday. My I don't know how much you and Andrew talked, but my internet is down because we had a storm here. And so I'm actually at my in-laws, their house, their internet didn't go down at their house. So I came over here to try to get on some reliable internet.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for making this happen.
Oh, of course, of course. It's one of the joys of living in the country, I think. So
Right.
how
Okay.
have you been?
Now let's good, good. I'm super excited. Andrew and I chatted a little bit already, and we're gonna talk a lot about your podcast and everything else. So, but
Solid.
before we officially like start, do you guys mind introducing yourselves and to our audience? You know, giving us a bit of information about your backgrounds and what do you do?
Sure.
Go ahead, Levi,
Wanna li-
kick us off.
Yeah, so Levi Garrett, I'm a lifetime athlete, grew up playing every sport you can imagine. And so of course I was kind of always drawn to physical activity and just kind of play, if you will, or simply put. And went to school, had the fortunate opportunity to play baseball in college. And with that, I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do for school. I was there to play the sport, not to go to school initially. And during that time, I was undeclared, and then I went with a business degree. I had transferred schools, and the coach had suggested kinesiology because a lot of the athletes went down that trail. And of course, I had knew nothing about kinesiology, so I inquired to see what that was. And it was literally everything I've done and everything I've wanted to do, which is, physical education, strength conditioning, nutrition, athletic training, physical therapy. Kinesiology is the umbrella for all of these different professions. And so I knew that I'd be interested in at least one of those things. So I kind of went down the path of wanting to coach and teach at the high school level. Did that for a little bit and realized that it wasn't going to be the long game for me. And I realized, though, that I love school and that I loved teaching. And so I kind of got back into strength and conditioning. And that was my opportunity to teach and also work with athletes, a population that I was very familiar with. And then I just kind of stayed in that cycle of school, kept going to school, kept going to school. I started working with firefighters, which was, although not athletes, they were a tactical population. So I loved working with them, and I was blessed by the opportunity to teach at a junior college. And that kind of, I guess the rest is history from there. Worked at a junior college, still do today. But I work now full time at Cal Baptist University and teaching the kinesiology department.
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking. Very similar background in that we both kind of grew up playing everything, a little bit of every sport, and that was always a big passion of mine. I think so. Here's a funny story. I actually began my college career as a music major. Funny enough, I played the trumpet growing up, and honestly, it was a little bit of a default. There's a little bit of I didn't know what I wanted to do, and so I was like, well, I've been doing this for a long time, in addition to playing sports, but I wasn't playing sports at the college level at that time, my freshman year. So I began as a music major, and then my sophomore year, I kind of started putting some pieces together and said, you know what, physical activity and being around sports is what I'm really passionate about. And I up to that point hadn't even heard of kinesiology. And so when someone introduced that idea to me, I was like, wait, I can do that? That's a major. I can study that in school. Let's sign me up. So that began my kind of I embarked from that point forward in kinesiology, and I actually went down more of the physical therapy route. That was kind of the direction I was headed for a long time, was physical therapy, pre-physical therapy. And so I was working in PT clinics, doing a lot of more of the rehab side, rehab and prehab, and working on injuries and being around athletics in that manner. And so I have had my hands in strength and conditioning, like Levi has done, and some personal training here and there. But most of my education was kind of focused around pre-physical therapy school. And I actually did get into physical therapy school after. So I got into my master's program, which was exercise science in Washington State. And that was where I first got my first taste of teaching in higher education. I got to TA some, I got to teach a couple low level courses, and I thought, wow, this is a lot of fun. Physical therapy, this is not a knock on physical therapy. I think it's a fantastic field, but you end up doing a lot of the same things throughout your day. It's a lot of repetition. The variety is the different people that you see, but you see a lot of shoulders, a lot of knees, a lot of back injuries, and you end up doing a lot of the same things with those injuries. And so switching into more of the higher education field was, for me, there was some variety there, and that fit my personality a little bit better, as well as having, I think, a little more freedom of schedule, right? In a clinical setting, you're typically there all day, every day. And I had gotten a little burned out of that. I've been doing, work in physical therapy clinics for about 7 years or so, kind of in and around school. And so getting a taste of that higher education schedule, as well as getting to interact with students, was a lot of fun, kind of getting to shape some of the things that they're thinking about, and kind of giving them the tools to think through things a little bit differently. So like Levi said, education became something that I never would have guessed I would have gone into education, kind of growing up, but it's something I've really found to be enjoyable. It's something I really enjoy, that aspect of educating and trying to help people, again, in a little bit of a selfish way. Kind of as I learn things and figure things out, I like to be able to share that. And so that's really where a lot of this podcast came from. Was this is another outlet for us to help try to educate people. You mentioned parents and kind of that being our target audience, and that's what we see as what we're doing, is trying to help educate parents who are in a very similar boat that we are. Of, boy, this is a challenge, right? How do we get our kids to live healthy lives in today's world, as well as our own healthy lives, with lack of sleep, or being busy all the time with schedules? So that's kind of what brought me to this point. Like Levi said, we were actually hired at the same time in 2015 at California Baptist University. We've built the online programs there, so our bachelor's and master's programs in kinesiology. And so we've had the opportunity to do a lot of that course design, and get our hands dirty with trying to kind of shape where that program goes, and the students' experiences as they go through there. So it's been a blast. We've really enjoyed it. Been a lot of work, but the experiences that we've had there are we were very blessed to be able to have those experiences early in our careers. A lot of times you go to a traditional environment, and yes, they're developing some of those online programs, but for people who are just coming out of graduate programs, that was a pretty cool thing to be able to get our hands dirty with that right out of the gate.
I love it. You're teaching student in university settings, but you're also taking your experience and then moving it online, and then also starting your podcast. And now many more people can benefit from your knowledge. So what made you guys decide to start a podcast?
Yeah, so Andrew and I both work remote. I live out here in California, but I don't actually live in the city in which our institution is. And then Andrew lives in another state. And so we had we developed a relationship over the years early on. And so we would have a standing meeting on Fridays. And it was as simple as, hey, man, we're talking about some interesting stuff here. We should just record it and provide content to our students. Because I think as educators, you're always trying to figure out a way to connect with your students, but also to keep yourself interested. We're both lifelong learners. I think we're all three of us here are lifelong learners. And so it was an opportunity for us to explore some interesting questions and topics, and then share some of that information that we came across, regardless of what it was, whether it was kinesiology specific, whether it was regarding families, because it's like Andrew said, a lot of the things that we're currently going through, and we know that students are going through those things as well. And if not specifically our students, others are interested in those things. And so it's just an opportunity to share the information that we're learning.
So Levi, you also like explained what kinesiology is briefly when you're talking about your background. So when would someone like see a kinesiologist versus like someone just go to like a PT? Like, is there like a difference?
That's a good question. I think, and maybe Andrew, you could jump in on this one a little bit too. I think so. Again, think of kinesiology as the greater umbrella. And then within that, I would go and see a kinesiologist maybe for sport performance. I would see them for rehabilitation, whether it's through an athletic trainer or a physical therapist. Some kinesiologists transition into more of the nutrition realm. And some of them become researchers and get into physiology. So, those folks that figure out ergonomic running shoes, or Gatorade's newest, product to maintain performance while on the field. Any of those industries you can get into as a kinesiologist. So in my experience, it seems like a lot of folks will kind of get a generalist kinesiology degree as a bachelor's, and then they'll go and get their master's in something like exercise science, athletic training. And then as they go into doctoral work or terminal degree work, they get even more specific. So most folks will kind of start wide and then start to narrow in their focus as they find what they actually like within the, I guess, umbrella or industry of kinesiology.
Yeah. So like it's becoming more common to see athletes wearing these kinesiology tape. How does it work?
Kinesio tape, yeah, it's an interesting tool, right? It's one more tool in the toolbox. If you kind of compare, have you ever felt kinesio tape, Jenna?
I have not.
Okay, so it's stretchy. That's the main difference. If you look at athletic tape, which is that typical white tape that's used like to tape an ankle, let's say, that's very rigid, and that's what it's designed for, is to really immobilize a joint, right? If you have an ankle injury, the ligaments have been loosened, and you want to go back onto the field, typically an athletic trainer is going to tape that up to immobilize it so there's less likelihood for movement. Opposite with kinesio tape, where there's stretch to it, right? It's a flexible, stretchy material. So as far as how it works, it's kind of an interesting design, and there are clinicians who swear by it. There are others who don't, right? It's one of those things where if you look at the research of it, there's not a ton of really strong support for its use, but it's really more of a re-education tool is the way I would describe it, to where you have kind of a sensory, connection there with something on the surface of the skin, but because it's flexible, it's allowing mobility at the joint. Sometimes one of the things I do see it used for is like lymph drainage. There can be a bunch of different designs, the way the tape is laid and the direction it's laid, the direction it pulls. It can be used to kind of, like I said, drain lymph fluids. If there's swelling in an area, it can be designed to help alleviate some of that swelling. Certainly can be helpful with some of that re-education of muscles as well following surgery. So it's typically more used in that rehab or prehab sense to help athletes or those who are recovering from injuries.
And it looks cool.
It does look cool. You feel like you accomplished something when you're wearing kinesiology tape.
Yeah, you're doing something. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's one of those things where there is a placebo effect involved, and that's where people a lot of times hear that word and they're like, oh, placebo effect, so it's not real, but the placebo effect is still an effect, and so there's some of that involved. There is some research that supports it, but it's again kind of depending on the clinician you see. They may use it and it may be effective for you, but it's not going to fix everything.
This is probably one of the most cost-effective placebo I've ever heard.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know a lot of people use it for posture too. So I've worked with the special needs community. For example, my brother has special needs, and so he has trouble getting extension and being in a neutral spinal position. And so sometimes it's actually pulled or used to pull traction as well, and try to help him retract his shoulder blades, for example. So it has many applications. To Andrew's point, the efficacy is kind of mixed results there, but there are lots of applications that they're used for.
I've heard this phrase on social media a lot, is movement is medicine. Would you agree? You guys probably both agree to that.
It better be. My career depends on it. So
Yeah.
no, it's interesting. I like this phrase a lot. It's become a little bit of a fad lately, perhaps, but I think there's a whole lot of truth to it. And for me, one of the ways I think about that is if you were to reverse it, right? If you were to try to make yourself as sick as possible, what would you do? I would lay around all day. I wouldn't move. I wouldn't sleep well. I wouldn't eat well. And so that's, I think, an easy way to kind of, oh, well, yeah, that does make sense that our bodies are moving creatures, right? We are designed or adapted to move. And you look at like kind of the basic anatomical function and features that we have. We are designed to walk upright. That's what we do as humans. You look at other animals who are, their anatomy mirrors or kind of reflects what their bodies are supposed to be doing. And so I very much believe in this idea of movement as medicine, but just the importance of walking upright. I mean, you think of, I would have, as an undergrad in kinesiology, I never would have thought that I would have become so infatuated with walking as a health outcome, because it's so low intensity, right? As a young kid, I would have wanted to only go sprint or jump and do all the hard things. But now that I've gotten a little older and seen more and seen some of the limitations that people come into exercise with, I think walking is one of the best things you can do. I think also in terms of just the barrier to entry, almost everybody can go walk, right? And so that's where I think most people should start, is trying to get a little bit more walking in throughout their day. And so very much in that line of exercise is medicine. You want to be doing things that help you feel better. Movement is certainly one of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what's also interesting as well is that there's not an age range for the efficacy or the need for movement. Like I said, in this time period of being, in the kinesiology field, I've worked with, children all the way to 90-plus-year-olds, geriatric patients, and I've worked with special needs and everything in between. And the one common theme is physical activity is required. The intensity may be different. That will vary, but all of them require some type of physical activity. And depending on the type of physical activity you do, it will drive the given adaptation that you're trying to seek. So if you are looking for general health, walking is great. Doing some calisthenics. These are like push-ups, pull-ups, isometric holds like planks and air squats and all these other things. These are all great regardless of where you're at in the spectrum of health, wellness, age, abilities, fill in the blank. So as you guys have mentioned, it's used a lot, but I think it's a great term that, it really holds a lot of truth.
Yeah, you actually just answered my next questions. I'm wondering like what are some exercise people can do at home if they don't have access to gym and equipment. You just mentioned like a walking is one, and also doing like jumping jack and then plank, holding plank, and then all these things are people can do like free of charge.
Yeah, and I think the more important thing here is that there are no rules. There's guidelines. The ACSM will suggest 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity with 2 days a week of resistance training. But there's not a rule. It doesn't have to be a bench press or a pull up or whatever. In fact, earlier today I was splitting wood, right? So I was picking up stumps that are 24 inches around. I was lifting it up, putting it on the splitter. And after those pieces of wood are split, I'm throwing them. So I'm doing some type of movement. I'm walking over to the piles of wood. So there's no rules on what the physical activity is. You just got to do something. And sometimes that can actually be a challenge, that there's so many options that people almost aren't interested. So I think at the end of the day, most of the time, it's not the physical challenge of it, it's the psychological piece. And that's probably what I've learned the most is, how do I actually get people to do this? I know it works and I know they need it, but how do I get them to do it? And that usually is the challenge and the fun part about figuring out this kind of puzzle of physical activity.
It's also, I think it's interesting, kind of Levi and I's background is that we both loved playing sports. So activity is something that we always sought naturally. But again, growing up and kind of maturing a little bit and seeing more people, you realize, oh, not everybody's built that way. And in fact, most people don't kind of naturally, they're not drawn to a lot of that activity or exercise. And that's fine. I think it's very similar to what Levi was saying, kind of finding out that there are different ways that people are going to respond to exercise. There are different things that you're going to gravitate towards. One of the sayings I use a lot in a sports nutrition class I teach is that we have a discussion that's based around a couple different diet styles. And effectively, I'm giving the students a leading question by saying, what's the best diet? And at the end of the day, the answer is it depends. And further, it's the one that you can stick to for the longest. And I would say, same thing with exercise. What's the best form of exercise? Well, it's the one that you're going to do the most. So finding the things that people enjoy, whether it's Levi just mentioned splitting wood, or if you're gardening, being out and about, those activities, any movement is better than sedentarism or being sedentary. And so finding the things that you enjoy, starting small. You don't have to, we're coming up on the new year, and everybody's favorite thing to do in January 1st is join the gym and try to kill themselves on and jumping into this new exercise program to lose weight. But I think if we look at behavior change and what are the effective ways of doing that, it's start with something manageable and build momentum over time. So it's just this little process of, and one of the things we talk about in the podcast sometimes is finance. And finance, we always hear about compounding and the importance of compounding in finance. I think the same thing applies with exercise and nutrition as well. As you start small, that starting piece, even though it may not change your life right away, it changes the mindset. And so now you're starting to think, what are some of the ways I can change this to keep those adaptations happening? I apologize for the noise. I've got a garbage truck outside my my house here. But very much kind of in line with that of find something you can do slowly. As you do that and build that habit and do it over and over and over, you can compound that and add a little bit more the next day. You don't have to go crazy on day one. Start with something manageable and just keep doing it. That's the important part.
Yeah,
I
but
can. Oh, go ahead.
go.
Sorry.
To give so that there is actually a takeaway though, and Andrew, you can jump in here too, so that people can have something here, is definitely get out and walk. One of our guests that we've had in the past, Stan Efferding, he recommends taking a 10-minute walk after each meal. Like you said, this is free. This is a low barrier of entry. If you live in a dangerous neighborhood, maybe it's just walking around your apartment. I mean, I know this is extreme, but there's going to be those people out there that are always kind of putting up roadblocks and barriers. And so it doesn't have to be some crazy thing. You need to be consistent with it, whether it's something as simple as walking, doing push-ups, doing planks, doing squat holds, doing air squats, doing pull-ups, doing dips on a chair. There's a million things that you can do. And quite honestly, I find myself training in that way most typically because, we're busy. And even though we're teachers and we're in this space, we could find ourselves being sedentary at times. I mean, sitting down at a computer, grading papers, reading manuscripts, trying to write some research. These all require a lot of seat time. And so one of the strategies for that, so those folks that are in an office setting that are busy, it could be as simple as setting a timer. And I know not only has that helped with my physical activity and making sure that I'm kind of moving throughout the day, but it also helps with my time management in my work as well and keeps me a little bit more focused. So there's something that I use. It's the Pomodoro technique. It's 25 minutes of focused work, 5 minutes of rest, or 5 minutes of not working. And typically I'll use that, especially when I find myself sitting a little bit more. It'll be 25 minutes. I got the blinders on. And then when that 25 minutes is up, I get up, I'll do some push-ups. I'll walk around, I'll go inside and say hi to my family or whatever that may be. But that's one strategy that I've used that's been very successful. That's a very low barrier. It doesn't take much to do that. And even if you're in an office setting, assuming you're allowed a coffee break or a bathroom break, I realize there's some limitations there, but get up, walk around the office, say hi to a couple folks, build some community. Like there's this community piece that's important in a fitness journey as well. So you can kind of, kill a couple birds with one stone.
I love it. I love it. I can echo with everything you guys said. I remember a few years back when we were talking about rewriting the physical activity guideline for the US. I think one of the conclusion they made is it doesn't really matter if you achieve the 10,000 step a day or not, as long as you're moving. That's great. And even if you're a weekend warrior, that helps too. So any movement is better than no movement. And also echoing what Andrew was saying, start small with behavioral change, because we have also seen research that, if you start with physical activity, as you slowly start, you increase your physical activity, but you also start changing your dietary habit. You start changing all other like healthy lifestyles that and compounded with your current healthy lifestyle. So it's like literally like one stone kills multiple birds.
Yeah, and on that topic, and you guys might jump in on this one, but for me, I think nutrition really is number one. It's something that we do every day, multiple times a day. So if someone were to ask me, Levi, I'm a mess, I need to figure this thing out, the first thing I'd really try to get them to do is make that one small change with their nutrition. And that too doesn't have to be some deal where you throw the whole pantry out and you only have like water and vegetables at your house. It doesn't need to be that either. All of this stuff is going to be small incremental changes over time, but it's the consistency with those simple things that are really going to pay dividends over the long run.
Yeah, we typically try to kind of break things. Well, I should say I like to keep things as simple as possible and kind of have mental models for these markers of health. And I would just add sleep into that as well. So we talked exercise, we talked food. Sleep would be the other real big pillar of health that we know plays a very significant role in the day-to-day health of everyone involved. So look to get it. I mean, the guideline is always that 7 to 8. Aim for 8 if you can. That's really, you do see a difference in some of the research between just 7 hours or 8 hours. So looking to be in bed and giving yourself the opportunity to get those 8 hours. The interesting thing, kind of tying that back to nutrition, we see that for people who are sleep deprived, not only do they make worse choices nutritionally, right? We tend to crave or gravitate towards the unhealthier options, but the physiology of the body actually changes when we're sleep deprived, and we don't process specifically carbohydrate and sugars the same way. So you see a lot of this, the same pattern that develops into type 2 diabetes is a very kind of acute pattern that happens when we're sleep deprived. So that's another one I would, again, throw in there is aim for as much as you can, being in bed at the same time, waking up at the same time nightly, trying to give yourself those 8 hours when you can. I know everybody's busy and that's a challenge. It does require some sacrifice and some discipline, but sleep really does play a major role in how the body responds to all these other things that we're doing, whether that be exercise or nutrition. So those are, exercise, nutrition, and sleep are those three big pillars that we continually find ourselves preaching about.
Yeah, and maybe one more thing to add there is give yourself grace. I know, Jenna, I'm similarly with your work. It's not realistic for people to just take anything that's plastic and throw it out of their house. Like, we can't do that. So
Yeah.
just like I don't expect people to all of a sudden just make this insane life change. It took, decades for people to get to one spot. It's going to take some time to move away from some of those habits and behaviors. So give yourself some grace, but at the same time, don't allow yourself to continually make excuses either. You need to kind of know the difference between those two. And quite frankly, only the individual can answer that honestly. So,
Yeah. So you guys invited me to talk about, plastic on your podcast, and then you had contents about toxic chemicals. So what brought your attention to these issues?
I've just seen it more so kind of it's become, I don't know if popular is the right word, but I'm seeing more of it on social media, more of it in research. People are starting to talk about this more. We certainly see it environmentally, right? When people are talking about the importance of climate change and environmental catastrophes that are happening, but all of that kind of tied together. For me, the real eye opener was looking at that with fertility and with obesity. These are, as parents, that's certainly something that we, kind of look at and want to make sure that we're raising healthy kids and being aware of some of those things that are pretty scary and alarming statistics that are out there that you're so gracious enough to share with us, Jenna, and some of those things that have been popping up from Dr. Swan's work. We talked about that on our podcast as well, but some of the data out there is very alarming in terms of what the long-term effects are. I think there's a lot more research that I'm very curious to see unfold and where that goes. But that was to me the fertility issue and the obesity issue, and how obesity definitely is impacted. The obesity epidemic was something that I was interested in my doctoral work. I kind of shifted it into exercise and cognition, but originally it began as exercise and childhood obesity was what I was looking into. And so it's been an area that I've been interested in for quite a while. And, we see that it's multifactorial. There are a lot of different pieces that go into the obesity equation, but environmental toxins definitely appears to be one of them. And so as we, for those of us who are working with clients and athletes, we want to provide them like an exercise prescription or nutrition prescription. But if there's this other piece that we're not even addressing that we know plays a role, we need to be aware of that. So that was the desire for more education was a big driver for me.
yeah. And I think too, I mean, in the fitness industry, when you think about all the food prep and all the shaker bottles and all the plastics you get with that, the fitness industry is a huge offender of the plastics, if you will. But for me, I think it was in addition to those, it was also the environmental piece where am I leaving this place better than when I got here? And I don't have it perfect. There's plenty of things to change and improve upon. But I am a firm believer that once you know, then you need to do something about it. And so, just trying to take some of those small steps, the suggestions that you gave us, and I I think that it was alarming to hear that even though we recycle and we try to do all these things, that most of that goes by the wayside anyways, and that we're actually maybe not helping as much as we think or we're told we are. And so that always kind of raises a red flag and gets me interested, is that uh, I just don't want to waste. I don't want to provide more waste. I want to restore, not take, I guess.
So,
Yeah, I think we look at that very similarly to nutrition. Again, tying it back to that piece of one of the things we talked about last time, Jenna, was where you get your meat. Was it, local butcher? How are those animals treated? A lot of what Levi and I talk about and kind of the direction or maybe one of the biases or worldviews that we possess is kind of looking at this pattern of how do things exist naturally in their natural state. We've gotten to this point, in our current world where we have a lot of amazing technology that can be very beneficial, but on the flip side, it can also be very harmful. And so I think there's always a valuable piece to me to look back and see how did humans live for thousands and thousands of years prior to all of this new stuff that we have that's changing the world. And maybe we need to keep one eye kind of in the back and one eye moving forward to be able to take advantage of the things that come along and the technologies, but also not allow those to become hindrances or harming us physiologically, which we know they have the capability to. Same thing with food, right? Fast food is convenient, right? Everybody's busy, but we also know that whole food, natural food, is better for us. We tend to overeat processed foods by almost 500 calories a day. which is again a component of that obesity epidemic. It all ties together, right? All these things are related, and so that's very much kind of where we're approaching all this from. Is maybe there's there's some value in looking back towards what are some of the patterns that have existed for as long as humans have been here, and that maybe we can do a better job of taking care of the resources that we have.
Mhm. That's exactly what you're trying to do in your podcast, is having different experts and then come and talk about all these different issues. So like Levi, before you joined, I already asked Andrew a little bit about the podcast. So tell us more about what other topics do you cover or you have covered.
Yeah, so I mean, generally anything under the sun of faith, family, fitness, or finance, I think a lot of the time will default to, regardless of the actual topic, we're trying to bring it back to something that you can bring value, some type of value you could bring to your family. So last week we had on a nutritionist, or that episode is now up. But we had a nutritionist on the show, and she generally works with distance athletes and athletes, but even so, you're still able to take some of those principles and apply them to a home setting. So our background obviously is fitness and health and wellness, but we also like to talk about, like I said, financial wellness, spiritual wellness, and trying to see how those are all interrelated, because we're doing all of those every day. And I feel like the more connections we can make between those, the easier it is to be consistent with them, because we're already doing them. So if we could find value in nutrition and the discipline and consistency you need in nutrition, but apply that to your work and or how you're spending time with family, these are all important things that we're trying to wrestle with. We've got young kids, and so it's really shifted to kind of like this family model of how can we help folks provide the best they can for their families through these 4 different disciplines.
That's amazing. Anything else that going on that you guys would like to promote?
Levi, anything on your end?
Right now, we're getting into the winter time, so selfishly, I find myself flowing quite a bit with the seasons. I live in a place that has 4 true seasons, so we had a nice summer, and we've transitioned into the fall, but the frost has snuck up on us quickly. I had a couple tree limbs break, and it actually took our internet down, and so I had to fell that tree the other day, and now I'm splitting it for firewood. So selfishly, the things that I'm doing are a lot of just homesteading, just getting things ready around my house for the winter that's going to come. So when the snow is here, making sure that the chickens are good, that we've put our garden to bed for the season, and just that we have enough wood to keep the house warm. And so around this time of year, I get kind of very selfish, and I become kind of a hermit, knowing that I'm going to have to hunker down here for a few months. So I don't have anything interesting to share in that regard, but I'm getting my physical activity in some unique ways. I'll tell you that.
Are you promoting a line of chainsaws at least?
I mean, hey, if anyone wants me to test a chainsaw, I'm really interested in the old Husky 372 XP right now. I don't have one, but if you guys need any chainsaw recommendations, I definitely got those. So
I think, yeah, the only thing I would add in there, Jenna, and thank you for asking, is if people are interested in kind of what we're doing, and I think our YouTube page is where most of our content is being developed and put out there. That's kind of where we're most active, is YouTube. We're certainly taking shorter form content on Instagram as well here. So if people are interested in kind of that family approach of how can we improve relationships as parents with our kids, with our communities, how can we improve our fitness through nutrition, exercise, sleep, etc. These are all areas that we're exploring and trying to, like you said, talk to experts and bring people in from various areas that can. We find ourselves doing a lot of the same topics, but from a slightly different lens, or exploring it in that sense. Because for those who are parents or who are in that same phase, you do a lot of the same things day after day, and there's a lot of the same challenges. But again, it's maybe a little tweak here or there, or a little tool that we can take from this expert or that expert that can maybe make all the difference. And so that's what we're trying to do, is explore those tools and strategies and share those with others who are in a similar position. So if people are interested in that, or looking for some additional, hopefully science-based, evidence and things, that's the direction we're headed. And we'd love to have you follow and participate. If people have questions, we always love fielding those from the audience as well. So we are here to try to just continue to help educate and get good information out there in this social media space, and hopefully it makes a difference for even just a few people. It'll be worthwhile, because we've certainly found benefit from trying to explore things from that perspective and make our families and communities better. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's where I think all the good things stem from, is the the local level, and then it kind of branches out there from there. So that's what we're trying to do and what we're trying to be about.
Completely agree. We will be promoting this live, the podcast, on all our social channel, and then we also have a newsletter which will be featuring you guys' podcast and channel as well. So thank you so much for joining today and then giving us all the wonderful tips.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Ted. I
thank you,
appreciate it.
Jenna.
This was fun.
Yeah,
This is
if
fun.
you guys want to engage with us, please feel free to reach out to us. Move 101 podcast. Questions about any of the aforementioned topics, we'd love to get into that stuff with you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a good evening then, you guys.
Thanks, Jen.
Jenna.
You
Thanks
too.
all.
Good to see you
Bye.
again.